Hello, and welcome to a live taping of the Perspective View podcast. Tonight, you are in for a treat as I have the pleasure of welcoming to the Perspective View podcast my friend and sister, Morgan Johnson. Tonight, we are going to be talking about perspective and how it is subjective. So, hence the title, Perspective is Subjective. So, before we get started, I would like Morgan to introduce herself to you all to tell you a little bit more about who she is and what she does. Morgan, over to you.
So we're going to keep this PG rated. I don't
Okay.
know, funny. We're joking. So my name is Morgan. I work in human resources. I've been doing that for about the past 5 or 6 years. And as you know, in human resources, we deal with all different types of perspectives. And as the topic says, perspective is 100% subjective. There are different pieces to the truth. One of my supervisors, his favorite saying is there is their truth, your truth, and then the truth. But they are all subjective based upon the person. So the truth changes, not necessarily saying that it's wrong. It's just all based upon your view of what happened in that particular event. So I do this on a daily basis, which is always fun.
Oh, I can imagine in the wonderful world of human resources. So, definitely, and I like how you said your boss says that there is their truth, your truth, and the truth, and that actually made me think of the definition of perspective. And oftentimes we may think of like artwork when it comes to perspective. I know sometimes they'll show you the drawing where it might look like, depending on how you're looking at the image, a face. And then it might also look like a vase, or it could take on different shapes. But when you look at the definition of perspective, there's various different definitions, one of which is the art of drawing solid objects on a two-dimensional surface so as to give the right impression of their height, with depth and position in relation to each other when viewed from a particular point. And the reason I wanted to talk about that particular definition is it's viewed from a particular point, a vantage point, a view, a perspective. But when we think about perspective, it's also defined as a particular attitude toward or a feeling regarding something, a point of view. So, to your point, Morgan, it's your point of view, your experience. So, when you think about perspective in the context of human resources or just working with people in general, how would you define it? Would you define it any differently?
I would say perspective is based on experience. So your experience shapes your understanding of what's being said or what is asking to be understood. And I say that, for instance, we were talking about truth the other day, and I was going back and forth with an employee, and I was just like, I just need you to be honest with me. And their perspective of honesty, well, I'm just going to answer the questions that she asked me. Whereas if I'm asking you to be truthful, I want you to be transparent. Give me the information that I'm not asking you so I can know the best way to help you. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces that a lot of people confuse, because honesty is just, it's surface. It's okay, you want to know some pieces, I'll give you some of it. It's like, you're putting together a puzzle. I'm going to give you some of the pieces. And when you get to finish it, it's like, okay, well, it's good enough. But do you just want good enough? Or do you want everything that goes with it? And that's where transparency comes into play. I want everything, because the pieces that you leave out, they can possibly hinder my ability to help you.
Oh, that's a really good point. And sometimes I wonder if, from an employee standpoint, and even from like a manager standpoint, if individuals think that they're doing something good by leaving out certain details. And then, two, you really don't know why they're leaving it out. So that probably makes it hard from your standpoint because you are basing your decisions off of the information you've been given.
Right. I can only make a decision off of what you've given me. It's like the same thing. If we pull HR out, think about your close friend that you're talking to. I actually had a friend, we were talking about her relationship, and she was giving me pieces of the conversation. And I was like, dude, you sound like you're wrong in the midst of it. And her response was, well, Morgan, I didn't give you the whole story. So then why did you ask me? Why did you
That's a
ask
good
me?
point.
if you're only going to give me your perspective. So that means that you don't want an objective review. An objective view means someone that can come in, give you all the pieces of the conversation, put them together, and then pull out the truth. Because that's basically what it is. You're not necessarily trying to figure out that you're lying, but all the pieces that line up happen to be facts. Okay, you said that you cursed him out. He said you cursed him out. Put those together. We know you cursed him out. He said you used Saturday words on a Sunday. You said I said strawberries and ice cream. Okay, those two don't match, but we know you said something. So that's the fact. But that's kind of how it works.
You know what? That's a really good example, and I think if more people maybe considered that, like, they want you to a degree, and I believe so. For anyone listening, Morgan does this wonderful segment called the Early Morning Minute, and a lot of times, what she is sharing is a different perspective to make people think. So, to her point, when we think about subjectivity and things that are based on and influenced by our experiences, our personal feelings, our opinions. And that is why we say perspective is subjective. But I love how in her early morning minutes, excuse me, she actually touches on this quite often, where it really is taking a step back to say, okay, wait a minute, let's level set. Let's look at all the facts. So I love that example because you're right. If that were to happen, you can objectively say, okay, both of you are saying this and it lines up, whereas this doesn't. So let's figure out how we can move from point A to point B based on what you all just stated. So I love that. And speaking of which, can you kind of talk about the early morning minute and also, just some of the lessons that you've shared so far? Because I think they're great. And also, it would be nice to kind of hear how that conversation transitioned with your other friend in terms of, what was the consensus, if there ever was one.
So first piece, early morning minute came from, I was literally having a conversation with my sister, and we talk about random stuff all the time and different perspectives that come into it. And I was like, dude, everybody has 60 seconds in their day where you can listen, take in information, or look at things from a different viewpoint. I said, and that's kind of how it works when I'm talking to people at work. I said, okay, Morgan, you need a 60-second moment where you are not filtering in any other information except what's being said to you. And you can do that. It's like, oh, that's not long. 60 seconds. I can do that. So I'm always talking to different people about different things. And I enjoy getting different perspectives because it helps me learn. It helps me modify how I respond to certain people because I'm a very straightforward person. I'm going to say it. But I also recognize that, like Steve Harvey said, some people can't take straight talk with no chaser. That's like straight whiskey in your throat. You're not ready for that. So that's what brought about the early morning minute. Now, going back to my friend, the consensus that we came to is that you didn't really want to hear an opinion. You just wanted somebody to listen. And a lot of the times, we as people, we have to step back and recognize who we're talking to. Sometimes when our friends and our family come to us, it's not necessarily that they want you to fix it. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about any relationship that you're in, whether it's romantic, friendship, business. Sometimes people don't want you to fix it. They just want you to hear their perspective, understand what they're saying, not agree, understand, and then allow them to come up with their own decision on what they want to do next. And if they want your opinion, a lot of the times they'll say, well, what do you think I should do? Sometimes automatically volunteering means that we are projecting our point of view onto that person as opposed to actively listening to what they're saying. That means, like I said, for that 60-second period, cut off your desire to respond. Cut off your desire to answer their question and intently listen to what that person is saying. And then if you need additional information, then you're able to ask those questions because you were actively listening.
And I can imagine that some people are like, okay, well, I feel like I'm actively listening, but how do I know if I really am actively listening?
So actively listening, there's a trick to it. So my twin and I, we have this conversation. When we first moved in with each other, we would argue all the time and it would drive me insane. I'm like, dude, just stop. What are you doing? So we were talking about, you've ever been to a carnival and there is a Ferris wheel, right? So some people say Ferris wheel, some people say merry-go-round, or carousel or merry-go-round. I'm sorry, carousel and merry-go-round. It's the same thing. But her perception is, well, Morgan, it's a carousel, even though we're talking about the same thing and her terminology was different. It took me a second to sit and listen to say, okay, Morgan, are these words, are they the same word? Are they synonymous? Do they have the same definition? Or we have a habit of doing XYZ statements. So she'll say something. She was like, you know what? We got into an argument. And I said, you know what? I don't really think you want to hear what I have to say because you're sensitive in this moment. And she said, I'm not sensitive. Tell me what you want to say. So I said what she wanted to hear. I let her have it unraw and unfiltered. And that turned into the worst argument ever. And I said, you know what? What we need to get into the habit of doing is say, my interpretation of what you're saying, or what I think you're saying is this. Is that what you're saying? And that gives the person the opportunity to agree with you, to say, yes, that's what I meant. That's what I said. Because how many times have you said something to somebody and they're just like, that's not what I meant? Well, what did you mean then?
Right.
Because what you said were this, this, and this. So that's basically what active listening is. It's giving the person the opportunity to explain their perspective for better clarity, as opposed to automatically assuming you know what they meant. A good example would be, I was in a meeting today, and the young lady across it yesterday, not today. I was in a meeting yesterday, and the young lady across the table, we were talking about one of the systems that we use and how the information transfer from one system to the other in order to get to this end result. But there's a third system that we use prior to that. I was like, okay, too much information. But anyway, the person at the table was just like, well, she means A, B, and C. So the only person that can explain what she means is her. So guess what? I'm going to ask her. Not to say your opinion isn't valid. I would 100% appreciate that. However, so can you please repeat what you meant and add the names of those systems so we can have clarity? And of course, she's salty over here because I'm not discounting your feelings. I have nothing against that, but you can't explain what someone else means because you're not that person. Give them the
Right.
opportunity to do that. And then if your two statements agree, awesome. That means I had double the clarity. But if not, now I look like a fool because I listened to you instead of the person who actually said it.
Oh, wow. There's so much to unpack there, especially I think when you think about cancel culture and what we see now, literally it is other people trying to interpret what someone meant by what they said. And seldom do they actually listen to what the person says they meant with regard to what they said. So I love that you said that, and for clarification, and the fact that if the person is agreeing that that's what they meant with regard to what they said, then it's not going to hurt to have more clarity, but to not allow that person to clarify and explain their point of view, we do people a disservice. So I really appreciate the fact that you said that. And it made me think of, there was a clip that was floating around on social media with Nene Leakes and Candy Burris, where I believe it was Nene who said, I said what I said. And Candy said, well, what you said was some, and she used an expletive essentially. But it was interesting because Nene was owning her truth, her perspective,
Yeah.
whatever that was. I don't know what happened before that. I just remember seeing the clip on social media, and it always made me chuckle because she was very frank and firm and standing by her point of view and her perspective. But from the receiver's end, meaning Candy, she was like, well, what you said was terrible, so to speak. And so it's like, if people either stand by what they say and mean it, or have the opportunity to clarify, I do think that we can resolve a lot of the issues that we have, like you said, in any relationship, whether that's family, marital, boyfriend, girlfriend, on the job, any relationship. So thank you for sharing that.
Or just let people have it. One thing that I have learned in this particular, under my mentor right now, one thing I've learned is you can be right or you can be righteous. Being
Oh,
right doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to receive the best outcome in the situation. Joel Osteen said it the best. Sometimes being right will have you all by yourself. And some you can't accomplish a lot of things in life by yourself. You can't market by yourself. You can't grow a business by yourself. You can't own an international organization by yourself. You need employees, you need people to help you run it. You need HR departments, you need payroll, you need accounting. You can't do that by yourself. But when you're being righteous, and let me just throw this out here, that does not mean being high and mighty. Oh my gosh, a halo is over my head. Being righteous means that I am humble enough, and not false humility, not all right, whatever, you got it. No, being humble enough to say, you know what, in this moment, my point of view is not as important as allowing you to express whatever it is that you're having in that moment. And I'm having to learn that, well, relearn that in regards to different things or changes that are going on in my organization, because I've been allowed to express my personality. I've been allowed to have a voice. And right now, my voice isn't taken from me, but it is tapered down because I have other voices that need to be heard. And I'm just like, you know what? You're right. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Let's do it your way. And then if it doesn't work, which sometimes that happens, let me take myself out and then reintroduce whatever could be helpful in this situation, because at the end of it, all we want is a solution. Let's be solution driven as opposed to mistake focused.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I think if more of us did that, it would make things a lot simpler. And I love even what you said earlier when you talked about active listening, in the sense that this is what I'm hearing. Is my understanding correct? Or this is my interpretation. I love that, because I think that does help. And to your point, are we focusing on the mistakes or being righteous? And so I think now in our culture, what we're seeing is a lot of that righteous attitude, or it's almost like individuals want to be judge and jury, except for when it comes to them. So they want grace, but they don't give mercy. They don't give grace to other
That's
people.
good. That's good.
And I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many examples of this that we see today, where it's like, if our lives were on Front Street, and actually, I'll share a personal example. Just yesterday on social media, this guy was trying to insinuate that because I posted Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation, that because I supported the judge in her confirmation, that somehow I was accepting of child abuse. And I was like, excuse me?
How
That's a flawed argument. And so I restated a quote from the New York Times, where they said that unfortunately some people misled the public to believe that what she did was not proper in the sight of the law, when in fact she was following the guidance of the law. And so I just replied with that, and they said, well, you should post a post essentially condemning her for what she did. And I was confused, because I said that wasn't the purpose of my post. The purpose of my post was just to say she was confirmed. That is a big deal in our culture based on the history of America. Great job to her. It seems like it's something that's well deserved based on her experience, expertise, skills. And it's not like she broke any laws. She was actually following the rule of law to make her decisions. But I thought about it last night, and I said, that's like me saying someone who watches anime, is because anime has had some instances where it might promote exploitation of children. It may promote child abuse. It may promote child pornography. That's like me saying, because this person in particular, because they watch anime, that they are in favor of all of those things, which we know that's not true.
you know
The
what?
two are not mutually, what do they say? It's
Mutually
not,
exclusive.
yeah, I was gonna say mutually exclusive, right? It's really not that they are the same thing necessarily. And just because and what I tried to explain to this individual is, many politicians, I cannot walk a mile and judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's shoes. I can't. I
Yeah.
have never been in her position. I don't even want to be in that position. Being a prior juror, I will tell you, that was a stressful situation for me.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what Judge Jackson has had to face in her courtroom, or the hard decisions she has had to make, and go home and sleep at night with some of the decisions. So I personally choose not to do that. That is not my line of work. So all I was trying to explain to this individual is I cannot walk a mile in her shoes. What I can do is say, well, maybe I wouldn't have handled it that way, but not cast judgment on how she handled something that I don't even know how I would handle it because I wasn't in that situation.
That is 100% facts. And it's interesting that you reference anime because so first of all, I love anime, hands down, flat out, but we're not going to go there. I reference that because there are so many different facets to anime, just like there are so many different facets to so many different cultures. And sometimes things get a bad rap, or, there's an old saying, my name is mud, because of what people think it is, as opposed to actually viewing it. Like I did see a post on TikTok about that, about a particular anime. And I said, your perception of this being child pornography is based upon your thought process. I said, because if 95% of the population that are 100%, either anime or non-anime lovers can see something different, then what does that say about you or where your mindset is? That's just like one of my friends and I, there's certain things that we don't say to each other because it turns into a joke. And
Okay.
our jokes are adult rated. So based upon the content, I know that's that one friend you don't have on speakerphone. But that just saying, but that doesn't mean that all of your friends are like that. Just because their content
Right.
is similar doesn't make it the same. And if we go back to the judge that you were referencing previously, I saw a TikTok post about her because I think her husband is of non-colored descent. I think
Okay.
I want to say he's Caucasian is what I want to say, but I don't quote me on that. And there was
Right.
a lot of flack that went behind it, to where it prompted this like TikTok series where people were saying, women of color, it's hard for women of color that are educated in order to be in a successful relationship, because no man wants a woman that's smarter than them. And
Oh.
it kind of segued to her, and it was just like, well, what are you teaching our young women when you marry someone of non-color, quote unquote? And when I say,
Interesting.
the fire in my soul lit up, because I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, Puerto Rican, or Haitian. What does it matter in regards to whom your significant other is? That's number one. And then number two, what you basically said to a population of women who are among the most educated, that you will not find a partner because you are too smart.
Oh, yes. I have not seen, all of those, but I can imagine. I feel like social media has given a lot of people um, uh, a lot of opinions that they like to share, whether warranted or not. But what's interesting about it is those same people, they don't want to give anyone else the opportunity to have an opinion that varies, if that makes sense. So you get to post what you want on your page,
Right.
but I think the projection is real in social media because a lot of people can hide behind their profiles. They will lock their profile down, but have a lot to say on your profile. And
Right.
it's like, well, if you are that vocal about a particular topic, why don't you share it on your page? Everyone's page is their own page, sharing things from their perspective. But I find it interesting when I see people go and argue with someone about something that they posted on their page. And my thought is, if you oppose it that much, go make your own post.
You can.
Why are you going to argue with other people about their perspective, or argue with them about whatever it is? And honestly, the same thing happened when I posted about her hearing, Judge Jackson's hearing. The number of comments that I received, even on LinkedIn, where there were some people, the majority of people were for. So, to the example you gave earlier, but then there were the loudest people, or to a degree, who um sometimes I say the loudest, but the ones who it usually you see it and you're like, whoa, like you said, that lit a fire in you when you saw some of those posts. It's usually the minority who's sometimes the loudest in terms of those comments. It's like, wait a minute, You are not even in the majority of the percentage of people who think this way, but because you're the loudest, people will believe what you say. So I love how you said your name is Mud, because that is literally what it's like on social media. Everyone will attach to that negativity, and it
Mm-hmm.
spreads like wildfire, but the positivity on the flip side doesn't spread as quickly sometimes.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's sad because there is so much positivity in the world.
Yes.
And because like I said, because early I like anime, it kind of filters into Asian culture. And there was a post here recently, and it was just like, why all of a sudden are Asian Americans so popular? I kind of cocked my head to the side. I said that perspective is only for. I take that back. I can't say that. I can say that. I have no issue saying that. My perspective is Asian men have always been attractive to me anyway. But I think more or less it's one of those things where now society has decided that kind of like what was the young lady, the very pretty dark skinned model with the bald head, and that became and I can't think of her name
I can't either, but I
right
know who you're
now,
talking about.
but it became
Um,
this big thing about, oh my gosh, her color is gorgeous. It's kind of like that pop in the moment to say, okay, now we're going to recognize this. Where do they need you to recognize them though? You
it's
need.
like you weren't beautiful until I said you were.
I was about to, because I think I was watching, what was it, what was it, Hammerstein Cinderella, and it was crazy because the guy that plays the prince, he's Filipino, and I was laughing. I was just like, he was always fine. Like, I'm confused. I said, maybe it's just me. I said, but I'm pretty sure he was fine before this culture pop came around. Like, he didn't need your help. I'm pretty sure Brandy thought he was fine too. Like, what are we doing around here? But that perspective kind of drives people to say, oh, well, yeah, I agree. Now people are automatically thinking that, this particular minority, that they're super this, that. No, I was like, dude, no, they've always been that way. People have always thought they were attractive. It's just now that it's something that's that pop to say, hey, let me be relevant in this moment. So if I talk about this topic, then I'll be relevant. And your relevance is your perspective. Like you said, you want to speak on something to bring yourself forward. And it's not necessarily bringing you forward, it's just putting you into the light for a moment, and then you'll be like everything else, fading into the ether. So, it's just like you said, perspective.
Yes. And that was the whole purpose for this show. I know you and I, we've had different conversations, and I always appreciate the fact that, to your point, you try to take a step back and understand. And I pride myself on trying to at least give other people, the space to be who they are. And sometimes it's hard for me because I feel like people don't give me that same grace, meaning,
Mhm.
and I remember telling people this, the same way you have an opinion, I'm entitled to have one too. And I think sometimes people forget that, especially when they're dealing with people who might be more open minded. It's like their thought process is, well, it's my way or the highway. And I think you and I, we've had this conversation in a different setting where we talked about that the individuals who might not necessarily be open to others' opinions, but they want everyone to be open to theirs.
Yeah, you're so dogmatic that you can't hear others in the room. Have a seat. Sit all the way down.
I mean, yeah, because it's literally it's mind blowing to me. It's like you want everyone to hear your opinion, but you're not willing to listen and compromise and let other people have an opinion that may be different from yours, or even to share their perspective. Like, it's so amazing to me sometimes the number of situations I've been in where someone tried to tell me who I am, what I think,
Mhm.
how I'm thinking. And I'm like, if I'm telling you how I feel, why is it that your opinion trumps what I say and I'm the person in question that we're talking about?
And scripture talks about that. It says, a fool speaks all his mind, but a wise man waits. And true to form, if you let people talk, like that person that's loud in the room, you're extremely dogmatic, you can't hear anything else. A lot of the times they will talk themselves into a hole. because they will spit out information that has pieces of the truth. And eventually that will come to light. And I've been put in more than one instance like that in human resources where my name was mud at one point. It was like, well, when Morgan said this, and I was like, fool, I took my HR hat off and put that on the ground. I said so. And then me being a minority in a room full of people, I was just like, anything that I say in this moment is not going to be perceived as passionate. It's going to be perceived
No.
as angry and controversial. And regardless of how much accuracy I'm going to relay my point of view with, how many things I'm going to have to back up what I say, depending upon my tone, my stature, and then just basically my overall delivery, will say you just wanted to fight, basically. And the other person can say whatever it is, but to that point I've learned that when I step back and I'm just like, you know what, you're right, let's go ahead and do it your way. My tone changes from one, it goes from this octave to this octave. I am compliant. That doesn't mean I agree, but I will comply with your request because I want to see what we're going to need to do to go forward. And then, case in point, a lot of times it's been really interesting here lately to get into a room and this person that you think you know so much, and they are lit on fire. You see them tied to a stake, burning for dear life, and it's just like, do I throw water on you? Help because your perspective was so accurate. It was so correct. You needed to be relevant in this moment, to just have that you were unwilling to receive help from others. And that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, I can be a peacock. My chest can be puffed up, feathers spread and out, but I also recognize too, like, I'm not above helping somebody even when you wrong me. It's like, cuz I don't want to see anybody
Right.
suffer or fail. Like, I
Agreed.
that is a pet peeve of mine. I don't care how wrong you've done to me. If I can see that if there is a way for me to help you, I will. But it's harder for me to do that when your intent is, I'm going to do what I think is best in spite of what happens to you.
Oh, yes. That's powerful. And you know me, I'll give people the shirt off my back because I'm the same way, but it's always unfortunate when you find that the people you try to help the most really, for whatever reason, whatever their motive is, may not necessarily want to see you succeed, and you want to see everyone succeed and try your best to help them. So I can imagine that's tough, but I'll tell you, that person who was so opinionated, when they had to feel that fire, it actually probably was a good lesson because it created a paradigm shift, because they realized, like, you know what, maybe they realized, not everyone,
Not
some
a-
people have certain things, and I like to think of it when I was training diversity, they would say, some people hold their stereotypes really tight to the vest and they don't really want to let go of whatever their thoughts are. And it really is like, when I look at the subjective points of view, one site says subjective means those ideas or statements which are dominated by the personal feelings, opinion, or preferences of the speaker.
Mm.
And they don't give anyone else the ability to have an opinion about it. It really is just what they think sometimes. But what's great is when people can take a step back and, if they're in that situation, come back and say, you know what, I was wrong.
Yeah, that right there, that is something that I learned latter into my adult years, my late 20s, early 30s, that the biggest thing that you can do in a situation that gets so much respect. I'll never forget, I was at a previous organization and we were having a meeting, and I guess whatever happened, I fell asleep in the meeting, out cold sleep.
Oh no.
And I remember my manager coming to me at the time. She was like, Morgan, you were sleeping. I was like, I don't remember being asleep, but I was asleep. So how would I remember? And that caused for me to be reprimanded in that moment. And I was very upset because there have been so many people in the office that had done so many things beyond falling asleep, were never reprimanded, but I was put on a probationary period. I thought it was a personal attack. And I'm just like, okay, what's going on? But in that moment, I remember God saying to me, he was just like, Morgan, apologize to my VP because just by chance she happened to sit in our office. And I said, you know what? So I wrote her email because her schedule was super busy. And I said, I want to apologize for my behavior. That was not my representation of the company. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I will do better in the future. And I'll never forget, she pulled me into her office and she said to me, she said, you know what, Morgan, I really didn't want to write you up, but I had to. However, I do appreciate the fact that you were bold enough to come to me and apologize for that. And from that point, the job that I have now, she is one of the people that wrote the references for me to get this job.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's huge.
yeah, just that one act of humility. Because granted, I was just like, I ain't gonna sleep. But at the same at the same time, I also had to recognize, Morgan, obviously your perspective is skewed. Everybody saw you sleeping.
Right.
And that
But
perspective,
you.
let me I said, so imagine if our CEO walked in and this is a town hall meeting and I'm asleep. What does that
Right,
show him? That basically his time wasn't valid.
right.
And I had to step back and take that person. But that's what I was talking about earlier as far as humility. Humility is not for the weak. Humility will gut check you.
Yes, it will. Oh, there's so I know you'll be back on. I know we have another show with another guest where we will definitely talk about a different perspective as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. But to your point about being gut checked, I remember those moments for myself where it literally was like, you know what? And it was in the instance of feedback. I was told
Mhm.
by someone in a leadership role. I was watching my peers present, and all of my feedback was positive because I wanted to encourage. I think I'm an exhorter by nature, so I want to encourage and uplift. And it's not a surprise. I want to inspire confidence in people to help them believe in themselves. And he said, "Well, if you are really paying attention, there was opportunities that these individuals had, and if you don't pay attention and give them that feedback, how will they get better?" So he said, you're doing them a disservice by not telling them the truth where they messed up or where they have an opportunity to improve. And that always stuck with me because it was a paradigm shift, but I had to be open to receive that. So it was a gut check. It was like, shucks, I thought I was actually helping them, but I was harming them by not telling them the truth.
Mhm. My boss says to me a lot of the times, telling people no is also a way of helping them. A lot of the
Yes,
times when we say yes, we can enable, like, and that is my passion, is to, like yours, it's like to encourage, it's to help any way that I can do that. But sometimes
right.
me being so focused on helping you, I'm hindering you from your own
Yes,
growth and development. And one of my coworkers is like that. Like, we're really, really close, but I recognize that I don't want that person to fall because I can see these things happening. But if I don't allow those mistakes to happen, when they come up and I'm not around, you will not be equipped to go into that particular situation and succeed. So
right.
that was another gut check for me. It's just like, it's okay to help, it's okay to offer, it's okay to do, but you also have to allow people to do. And yeah, that self-reflection, man, reflection with humility, those are things that it's just like, man, they'll make you, I'm going to sit in the corner and just put my nose to the wall. Like, are we doing this again? Like, you really about to make me think about this? And it's just like, yes, because you can't be right all the time, or you shouldn't think that you're
Right.
right all the time, because there are other point of views, there are other perspectives, there are other ways of thinking, there are other ways of doing things, there are other ways to coming up to conclusions, and they don't all include you.
That is so true. And literally, to your point, sometimes the no is helping them. And that was pretty much my lesson for the feedback. It was, even constructive criticism is helping. So I had to look at it differently. So you are right. There's more than one way to get to the same answer. So I always like to say 5 minus 1 is 4. 2 plus 2 is 4.
It is.
Three, four
Plus,
times 1 is 4.
hey, listen. So if we don't divide it, 8 divided by 2 is 4.
It's
There
4.
are multiple ways to have
Exactly.
4.
So it is, I've really enjoyed this conversation on perspective. I know we'll get to do this again, but before we wrap up, can you please tell our listeners how they can connect with you and how they can actually hear your early morning minutes?
So my early morning minutes, they are posted on Instagram under Say Something Saturday. And it is say underscore something is spelled SUMTHING Saturday. So say something Saturday spelled originally. Or my personal Instagram, which is morgan.r.s Johnson, which is actually my name. It's there's a funny story behind that. But yes, my initials are Mrs. Johnson. So that is my name. You can also find me that way on Facebook. I am also on TikTok. My my TikTok handle is OH, other way, and then underscore and H with 4 M's behind it. They all link together. So if you find one, you'll find the other one. And I will be Say Something Saturday is similar to the early morning minute. However, Say Something Saturday gives me a more diverse platform to involve my faith because I am a Christian. And it also just gives me that piece to connect realism because the funny thing about people, when you tell them that you're a Christian, it turns into you're high and mighty, holy roly. Let me stop and check you, sir or ma'am. The reality of people and their Christian experience is one perspective. Let's hit it. Number two, you can't have that perspective without some real life situations.
Right.
And that's basically what people turn into what's called testimony. And I will never get up here and sit to say, oh my gosh, I'm about to preach to you. No, what I'm about to do is tell you how my life was affected by this, the things that I've done to overcome this, and how it relates to these pieces of scripture, which, like I said, are my perspective. And you can either agree, disagree, or share yours, which may give me insight to my own personal growth because I'm all about that. Just come respectfully.
Right. It is so true. Oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack, even with what you just stated. So, thank you for sharing how our guests can get in contact with you. We will make sure to put it in the comments, but this will not be the last time that we will have Morgan on with us. I really love the fact that she is so open to other perspectives and then also helping others consider different points of view. So, thank you so much, Morgan, for joining the Perspective View podcast. Really happy to have you on as a guest and looking forward to future conversations as well.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Thank you for having me. It's been a blessing.
You're welcome. And likewise, and to all of our listeners, thank you for your support. We really appreciate it. And until next time, keep an open mind.